Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching from. This is Dr. Canute White, and on Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. It's nice to see you again. Those who I can see, those who I can hear, it's nice to hear you again too. Right? Let's put it that way. But definitely though, it's nice to be with you another day, and it's nice to have you here in the podcast another time. And today, I will be talking to a very interesting person. She has a lot of knowledge as it relates to theology, and she tried to blend politics with theology. She is a social activist. She wants the best for America, the best for the world, and she believes in social justice. That's Dr. Marcia Ledford, and she will be with us shortly. And we'll be talking about a number of things. But in particular, this thing about political theology is very interesting. A lot of people may not know, I had spent some time in theological seminary. And one of the things that I've learned in my first year in seminary is that there's this thing about blending psychology with theology. Those of you who know me know that I'm a psychologist, and I love psychology. I always say psychology is my baby. And blending it with theology was sort of challenging. I would love to know, to hear how Marcia will blend theology with politics. Let me welcome Marcia. Marcia Ledford, Dr. Marcia Ledford. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Canute. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, ma'am. Nice to have you. And I'm sure I'll be learning a lot from you, and my listeners and viewers will be learning a lot too. Where are you reaching out from, Marcia?
I'm in Michigan near Detroit.
Oh, you're in Michigan.
In the United States. Yep.
Cool. What's the weather like there now? Is it very cold, getting colder?
No, not yet. We're still having September's typically very pretty, and the leaves are starting to turn, but it's not getting cold yet.
Okay, cool. I love that. Marcia has been having some challenges. Guys, those of you who are viewing, so my apologies, on behalf of Marcia. We had tried some technical challenges. Marcia, tell me, who is Marcia? Who is Marcia Ledford, Dr. Marcia Ledford? Let's start there.
Well, I come from Michigan. I was born and raised here. My dad worked for General Motors, and so this is my home. I've always been here. Yeah. I am an Episcopal priest. I'm a civil rights attorney. Mm-hmm. And I sensed a call to ordination as a kid, but I didn't see that opportunity for women at the altar and the pulpit. Mm-hmm. And then I came out as a lesbian, and I sure didn't think there was a place for me as an ordained person in the church. But I went to law school. I became a civil rights attorney. I did that for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the call to ordination was not going away, and the Holy Spirit was not accepting my no for an answer.
Right.
So in my late 40s, I went back to seminary and I got a Master of Divinity degree. And I served the Latino populations in Southwest Detroit, and I became appalled at what we are doing to families under our antiquated immigration system. Mm-hmm. And I decided to study formally about public theology and what that means, and I got a Doctor of Ministry in that. So that brings me to date. I have founded a mission called Political Theology Matters.
Right.
And I write, speak, preach, teach about the importance of faithful people speaking about their belief system for social justice in the public square.
Yeah, Marcia, I love that. And we'll be talking more about that, because it's a very interesting concept that I'd like to learn about. I'm excited to find out what you have to say about that. But I love to talk about my guest childhood. Marcia, talk to me about your childhood.
Well, let's see. I like I said, my dad worked for General Motors. My mom was a homemaker. Unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was 11, and so it was my brother and I living with my mom, and we had some rough patches in there,
Yeah.
but I went off to college and I met Linda, my partner slash wife. We just
Okay.
celebrated our
Cool.
39th anniversary
39th.
last Sunday.
Congrats.
Yeah, and then I went into law practice and did that for many years, and then decided to go to seminary, like I said.
I love that. I love that. A lot of years. Well done. Congrats to both of you, Marcia.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right. One of the things I like to ask following that, before I get into some of the questions that you
Sure.
answered, what are some of the inspiring messages or inspiring message from your childhood? What would you like to share that would be inspiring?
I think that I learned, even though I was born into an age where women did not have a lot of opportunities in their work life, and the expectation was they were going to stay at home and be homemakers like our mothers were.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's just, I I was born in a time where my future could have been rather prescribed for me,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. And I was always encouraged by both of my parents to go to college and figure out what I wanted to do for myself. And so I think their outlook on life about the importance of education and of broadening your horizons was very inspirational for me from both of my parents.
Oh, that sounds good. I love that. This is Dr. Canute White, and you're listening to Canute's Exploration. I'm sitting in with Dr. Marcia Ledford. She's a theologian and she's a lawyer. She has a lot to talk about. But I saw a quotation from you, Dr. Marcia, and it says social justice has become a highly controversial and politicized term, but the teaching of Christ are clear. Whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me. Talk to us about that quote.
That quote sort of sits at the core of my being.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to say that we are Christians, then we are required, we are duty bound, as taught by Jesus, to care for those who struggle and to bring people from the margins into the center.
Right.
And so I think that's a very important message for us when we are talking about social justice of a secular society. And there are so many problems that we have major issues that we need to address.
Yeah.
And so I use that quote that you just read as a primary reason why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Interesting. Those of you who are watching will see the code running across the screen. Those of you who are listening on your favorite podcast platform, you heard the quote that Marcia, just talked to you about. I will ask Marcia now about political theology. What is political theology?
That's an excellent question, Canute. So, political theology has some pretty easy to remember aspects to it. Political theology is speaking your faith, whatever it may be, and then speaking in the public square for social justice to as large an audience as possible. So it's got three components to it. Speaking some faith understanding of yours in the public square to as broad an audience as you can. Now, I'm speaking as a Christian cleric, but when I say this, and when I'm talking about the American First Amendment, I'm talking about any faith tradition.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to find a statement across the world's major religions that says something like what Christians call the golden rule, which is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
So most of us are part of a faith tradition that respects, we are called to respect the other. So political theology is basically about calling for respect and care for those on the margins.
Interesting. I love that. I love it. And the connection, politics has to do with governance, right? And
Yes.
And you blend theology into that as you bring the religious aspect of governance into being, I guess.
That is correct. The root of political is polis,
Okay.
which is from the Greek meaning city.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk about something that is political, it is of the city or city-state, if you will.
Yeah.
It is rules that derive from a polis.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who have heard a lot of the gospel of Jesus know that he was constantly critiquing political systems.
Yeah.
He was either challenging and critiquing Rome, or he was challenging or critiquing Judaism in first century Palestine. So Jesus was our primary political theologian in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And Moses, of course, was the primary political theologian in the Old Testament.
Ooh.
And so each of these people challenged injustice in ways that would get people thinking and would cause them to act in ways that would countermand injustice in their respective societies.
I love that. I love that, Marcia. Why is political theology so important to you and to to society in general?
Well, as a young lawyer and one who has studied the Constitution, the American Constitution is a pretty amazing document, and I love it, and I think it is in a way a living, breathing thing, because it grows and expands and is interpreted, and our understanding of it has changed a lot since it was first enacted. And so the same thing for me with respect to the Bible, particularly the gospel. In the Gospels, we learn a new way to live, which is to really look out for each other and to be responsible for those of the least of these, those of us who live on the margins and suffer from systemic injustice. So my work allows me to combine my love of the Constitution and my love of the gospel in ways that call us to do better and act better and be more compassionate in the way that we engage in self-governance.
Yeah, I love that, Marcia. Political Theology Matters, LLC, limited liability company. Why did you start this company? And tell us a little about this company.
All right. So I thought about creating it as a charity, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. But as you know, there's some speech restrictions in terms of advocacy and endorsing candidates and doing various things.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be limited by those regulations. I think they are very important for nonprofits. So it's not that I disagree with the law or anything like that. It's just that I decided I wanted this to be a regular business where from which or through which I preach, teach, speak, write, whatever you want to call it, through this mission, because I view Political Theology Matters LLC as a mission, and it's designed to equip faithful people to call out injustice and work to fix it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I love it. I love it. The company operates in your state only?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Later
Well,
on, you can get contact for that company. Go ahead, Marcia.
through the internet, however, I mean the company is based in Michigan because I live here, but
Okay.
I work all over the world
Okay.
through it.
Yeah. I am Jamaica. I always, even though I'm living here in the United States, I always think about Jamaica. How much would you be able to work with Jamaica through this system?
I think that my reach around the world, particularly to English-speaking countries, and I've been to lovely Jamaica, by the way, and I thought it was beautiful.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can work with anybody anywhere because of the internet and through Zoom, like with this podcast and whatnot. There's plenty of opportunities for consultation or coming to visit. Of course, that depends a bit on what's going on with the COVID variants.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You will hear more about the contact information for Marcia's company, Political Theology Matters, later on. Marcia, what I want you to talk about though is this other quotation that you have, achieving greater social justice in American society. You had said something leading up to that, but I suspect that this is a passion for you. Talk to me about that.
Well, that's very true, Knut. I have dedicated my working life to working towards greater social justice in a number of different ways, but it's always been about finding ways where more people can be part of the system instead of standing outside of it. And of course, as a young person coming out and getting together with my wife Linda, we constantly had to negotiate our existence, our life, without being able to get married, without being able to cover each other in our health insurance, without having inheritancy protection, without a written will, without being assured that if one of us was in the hospital, the other would be able to make decisions for us.
Oh, yeah.
So we we felt as second-class citizens in the United States because many of the rights that people sort of take for granted, we could not have, even though we were taxpayers and are contributing members of society and work for the common good. So whenever one group or people is diminished, we are all thus diminished.
Yeah.
And so it is incumbent on us to work so that all of us have an equal playing field.
And you remind me of that poem, No Man is an Island, when you talk about diminish.
That's right.
Right. When one person dies, it really diminishes everybody else that is alive. In some way, we might not see it or feel it, but it does. All right.
Right.
Cool. I love that, Marcia. I love that. Okay. What are the differences between political theology and civil religions?
Okay. Are you in the United States, Knut?
Yeah, I live in Florida.
Okay. All right. So you've watched what's happened over the this last year, particularly with the January 6th insurrection.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So political theology, like I described earlier, is where you take a faith tenet, like something from your sacred text, a belief or a doctrine that has been developed over a long period of time, and you use that as the basis for your advocacy.
Okay.
Civil religion takes something that is not from a sacred text or teaching, but makes it so. It sacralizes it, okay? It makes it quasi-sacred. I'll give you an example. White privilege has been sacralized. white privilege in the United States has been made a sacred condition, if you will.
Yeah.
All right. Then what happens is this thing that's been made sacred, this expression or phrase or whatever, so white privilege, is creedalized. In other words, it's turned into a kind of creed.
Yeah.
Okay, as if it was a gospel, as if it was from a sacred text. So I'll give you another example. It usually shows up on a red hat with white letters,
Yeah.
and it is called Make America Great Again.
Okay.
Okay, so for any of us who've been here long enough, we know what America has been like, where we had segregation, where we had Jim Crow, where women couldn't vote, where LGBTQ people were criminalized. And so for various populations, when you say make America great again, you're basically saying let's unroll all of that stuff and and revisit the white supremacy that we have known in the past in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last thing you do is you take that and you kind of shove it down everybody's throat. Okay, it's like if you don't believe this newly minted creed, you're not a good American. There's something wrong with you. And of course, what did we see on January 6th? We saw a whole bunch of angry white people who feel like their white privilege and their power has been challenged, and based on a leader who apparently, gave them permission to go do what they did, stormed the Capitol and tried to upset a constitutionally mandated process.
Yeah.
So we saw American civil religion rearing its ugly head on January 6th.
Yeah.
So there's a very, very big difference between acting as a political theologian, where one of many voices comes to the fore to talk about the situation and what we can do to fix it or make it better.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where, and I'm talking about atheist voices and agnostic voices and every denomination and faith and, everybody coming together and participating in the democratic process to write the best laws that help the most people. A civil religion is designed to basically overtake everything else.
Yeah. That's very interesting, though, Marcia, the way how you put it, and this thing about blending, because that is what all of this is about: politics and religion, politics and theology, right? The social justice system, so to speak. I know you connected with with theology, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm happy that someone like you able to do that, right? Because we need that sort of connection. Church and state. I am not sure if you'd like to say something on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Americans have been raised with the idea that we must practice a separation of church and state. And that is a huge misunderstanding. What the First Amendment says is that the Congress is prohibited from establishing a superior religion.
Okay.
Now, why was that written into the First Amendment? Well, James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and others who are architects of our Bill of Rights wanted us to create a system that was different than in England, where there had been warring over Catholicism and Protestantism for centuries. And they wanted to create something where people could choose their own religion and the way that they exercise it. But that is not a prohibition on us as individuals. And so if you look at some of the major movements in the United States where civil rights were won or added to our understanding of American society, you realize that religion played a part in many of them.
Yeah.
So the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Absolutely preached the gospel during the civil rights movement. Cesar Chavez with the United Farm Workers and Dolores Huerta. Cesar was a devout Catholic. They had pilgrimages to, like in medieval times that replicated what happened in the church in Europe, where they were able to call attention to the plight, the terrible working conditions of migrant workers, using their faith as a basis. This didn't establish a religion. It just created a source for their arguments, their reasons why things needed to change. Elizabeth Cady Stanton wrote the Women's Bible during the women's suffrage movement in 1870, I think, something like that.
Okay.
So, there's always been a faith voice in our suffrage movements. For some reason, though, people are concerned that we are not able to do that, and it's not true. I've had people say that, the phrase separation of church and state is in the Constitution.
Okay.
And it is not. It is not in the Constitution.
Right.
So it's a phrase that comes from Thomas Jefferson in a letter he wrote to a group of Anabaptists.
Okay. Interesting. I want to acknowledge this. What happened is that, and we know religion is like religion / Christianity, stands alone, and many people try to separate things from it, separate sex from religion, church from politics from religion.
Yeah.
Separate law, your law from religion, psychology, everything. Is this something that you think should happen? Is that any concept, any discipline, any ism should be separated from religion, or things need to be clinged to religion as it is?
Well, I would say no, because I think for any healthy religion, the religion has to address the major aspects of our lives as human beings.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how you engage in a religious practice where so many parts of your life are truncated from it, because that's not how we live our lives. For example, I ask people, so when you sit in the pew in church, where is your voting self when you're sitting there worshiping? Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the voting booth, where is your worshiping self? Where's your faithful self?
Yeah.
They're all together. They can't be separated any more than Solomon could have cut the baby in half and had two living halves of a baby. It's not possible. It's all interwoven inside of us. And so I think a healthy religion has to help us in navigating all aspects of our lives.
Interesting. I'm sitting in with Dr. Marcia Ledford, a theologian. She's a lawyer. She's here in the United States. I'm Dr. Kenute White, reaching to you out of Miramar, Florida. And you're on Kenute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Marcia, I am going to talk more about establishing a progressive Christian theocracy. Yeah, but let me ask this, your opinion. Marriage, right? Is marriage, would you say that it's a percentage of legal and a percentage of say theology, right? And what percentage would you say is the portion as it relates to marriage? I'll say that for you again. It is proposed by some that marriage is not much theology, is not much religion, not much Christianity, but more legal. Talk to me about your opinion on
that. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you rephrase it?
All right, let me rephrase it. When we get married, there's a lot of legal thing to it, legal aspect.
Yeah.
Fine. And in the religious circle, in Christendom, we'll talk about marriage and what the Bible says about marriage. However, how much of marriage is really dependent on religion?
Oh, okay. I've got you now.
Yeah, you got me, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
the legal aspect.
A legal marriage in the United States has been in the past a contract between a man and a woman, right?
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so over 1,000 rights and benefits inure to a marriage license.
Right.
So when you are married, it creates a whole system of protections and rights for your relationship with your spouse.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I believe that consenting adults who want to be married, whether it's a man and a woman, two men or two women, should be able to engage in a civil marriage contract.
Okay.
And that's basically what the Supreme Court said in the Obergefell case that was decided in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but every religion, has something to say about whether two men can marry and two women can marry. It seems to be pretty well decided that a marriage is a man and a woman. Sometimes there's polygamy. Sometimes there's one man and several wives. That's a little bit separate issue, but it all boils down to, as long as there are consenting adults of age, I think they should be able to get married and enjoy the legal protections that are afforded for them.
Yeah.
But I also believe that religious traditions can decide whether or not they are going to authorize or accept or recognize a same-sex marriage, for example, or a polygamous marriage, or whatever it may be. A lot of times people get upset, like a religious tradition is going to be forced into recognizing a same-sex marriage, for example. And that's not the case. And there are plenty of denominations that don't recognize it. So I think, and when I perform a wedding for a couple, regardless of their genders, I'm operating as an agent of the state for that particular action, which I don't really like. I prefer it when people go get married civilly and then come to the church for a blessing.
Yeah.
I think it's the best way to do it. I really don't like being an agent of the state.
Yeah. You got what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yep. Yeah. It's really up to the religious entity to decide whether or not what kind of marriages they're going to sanction.
Yeah. Great, Marcia. Forgive me for saying Marcia. My sister.
Well, you said that's how your sister said it.
Right.
I totally understand. Believe me.
That's all right, Marcia. All right, Dr. Marcia Ledford. I'd like to find out from you, though, this thing about trying to establish a progressive Christian theocracy. Talk to me about that.
And the answer is no.
Mm.
All right. Well, maybe just a little bit, but really no, because the First Amendment. Let's take a look at the First Amendment for a minute. It has 45 words, and they may be the 45 most powerful words written in a secular context in the history of humanity, because they provide an opportunity for people to come together and voice their opinions and petition the government for the redress of their grievances and so on and so forth. when I talk about us speaking in the public square,
Yeah.
I want to see progressive Christians be more vocal in the public square,
Okay.
because we typically are on the reactive if we are saying much at all. And that bothers me, because the more conservative representatives of Christ's Holy Vineyard are often much, much more vocal in the public square. So what I'm about is encouraging all of the voices to come together, which is what a true democracy does. And we work on problems and hash them out. And through rhetoric, we arrive, hopefully, at the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a Christian theocracy. We have had a Christian theocracy in the United States unofficially.
Okay.
through conservative Protestantism. It's been there since, well before the inception of our country. And that hasn't really served us all that well. So we have to put down our guard and start listening to each other in more functional, productive ways in order to make the best laws that help the most number of people.
Yeah. Hey, so. Marcia, sorry, you saying something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My theory talks about where you stand depends on where you sit, something to that effect.
Okay.
My thing is that politics, we know the art of governance, and we have political seats in countries, and in the United States here, Jamaica. I talk about Jamaica because that's where I was born, and I should say then our first female prime minister of Jamaica, the most honorable Portia Simpson Miller, as a female, I would think that she would have some interest in protecting the rights of female citizens because she's a female. I'm saying that to say that if more Christians get involved in politics, there's this thing about protecting the morals of society, the Christian moral, I should say, and uplifting Christian principles, sort of saying the same thing, but in a deeper way. Do you think that would mean a Christian theocracy in effect?
Well, that's a really good question, and I would say no, because what we want to have happen is to have all the voices come to the fore. The agnostic and atheist voices, representing every religion in the United States that's present, which is a lot. And it's secular people with no faith-based reasoning behind what they advocate for, but they just feel that it's right. It's humanist, if you will. I don't think that necessarily works to establish an official religion. Does it influence the way policy is made? Yes, of course, but that's always been the case.
Right.
And, we have, like I said, overwhelmingly, the United States has had a Protestant represented government, because all the members of the Congress, most of them have been Protestant Christians.
Yeah.
And men and white men, and haven't done the best job. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I got you, Marcia. I got you. How did American Christianity become so divided? If we're seeing.
Okay. Well, we had slavery in the United States for 156 years. Before the United States was formed. African chattel slavery has always been a part of our history, even before we began, for many years. So I would say that Christianity has always been divided because our country's always been divided. But we have seen the things that have gone on over the last 4 years with a president who seemed to stoke the fires of divisiveness, make us more exposed. The racism and the dividedness has become more to the front. It's become more prominent because of many of the events that have been going on. And of course, George Floyd, his lynching, and it was a lynching. It was an extrajudicial killing, which is what a lynching is. There's no judge or jury. There's no prosecutor. There's only an executioner. And so the deep flaws and divisions, the cracks in our foundation have over time just been spackled over. And this time, the cracks are expelling the spackle, and the deep divisions that have been covered over for centuries have been laid bare in a very different way. Nobody who saw that tape can say what happened was justifiable.
Right.
Yeah. And that it happened because it was a white officer and a black man. So I think whenever wounds are exposed and issues come to the fore that have needed to surface, it can ultimately be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because we are now starting to take a harder look at ourselves. I don't think we're ever really going to be the same. You know, like something bad happens and everybody's upset for a while and then they just go back to normal. I don't think we can do that after the George Floyd lynching.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we look pretty divided, but I don't think it's any different than it has been. It's just become much more prevalent and it's up in our faces.
Yeah, and because you have said that, I have this question to ask you shortly. But let me remind our viewers that you can check out the audio version of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many other podcast platforms. Dr. Marcia Ledford, I'm sitting in with her, and I am Dr. Canute White. You're on Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. Tell me something, Marcia, Dr. Ledford. Is this thing about social justice a remote concept? Is it a remote accomplishment?
You mean, is it not doable? Is it so big it's not doable?
Right. Is it that we're pursuing it like happiness, and we keep pursuing it, and just not catching up with it?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I think the Christian response to that is that, you know, the Christ coming to earth and his resurrection wasn't just a one-time event. And we are called in our belief, our texts, the New Testament, the Gospels particularly, to look to the arrival of the reign of God, to work, to do good works so that we can usher in a better world, usher in the age of Christ. And I do think it's possible, but it requires a tremendous amount of change in all of us in order to do it. And we have to start reassessing our priorities. What is the value of a human being? What is the value of a human life? What is the value of our Mother Earth that we are poisoning?
No.
You know, what is the value of hordes and hordes of money when people go starving? Those are the kinds of questions that we have to come to terms with. Are we capable of doing it? Yeah, I think we are. We ended slavery. Women got the vote. Black men got the vote. Black women got the vote. LGBT people can get married. We have lots of examples throughout our history that show that when we work together in power, sharing our mutual power, that we can do lots of amazing things, that are ordained by God.
Yeah. Yeah, something came to me just now. You will remember when, back in my society, back in Jamaica while I was growing up, the cats and the dogs are always fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been seeing that lately, Doc? Cats and dog fighting? Dogs chasing us, cats? And
No, not where I live, but
right. Have you ever, you have seen that before, right? Long ago, perhaps.
I can't really say that I have.
Okay. But back in my society, cats and dogs were never friends.
Yeah.
Long ago. The cats will run from the dogs, and those people listening will remember. Some people will remember. And whenever the dog chased the cat and catch up with him, he will actually kill the cat, right? But over the years, we have not been seeing that anymore. And it comes to my mind, what happened? Is it that we have a new breed of cats, a new breed of dogs? Is it that, but something went right, Doc, that prevent that sort of animosity, conflict between the cats and the dog? I am saying this because I think that eventually, and I'm asking you as well. I'm saying this, but I'm asking you. Eventually, there has to be some meeting, not necessarily halfway, but at a central point in terms of social justice. Hey, okay, let's have this justice. So therefore, we don't need to fight for this again. We don't need to fight. Let's just stop it.
So like a catalyst? Like a catalyst, you mean?
Well, yeah. I mean,
I think, frankly, we had a whole series of killings by police of Black people.
Yeah.
I mentioned George Floyd, but of course there's Breonna Taylor and many others, and then the killing of Ahmaud Arbery by civilians who the authorities did not want to prosecute until there was so much pressure, and now they've been charged,
right.
and rightly so. I think that this is one of the major catalysts, because when we start looking at the racial systemic injustice, other kinds of injustices that are part and parcel of it, sort of tangled in with it, all begin to start crumbling, or we start looking at them from a different angle. And I am hearing all sorts of conversations about police reform, or defund the police, which I don't agree with. I think that that's kind of a ridiculous thing. We need to have community safety officers available to us when we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But it has started a conversation that has been very much needed, and that is, how are we training our police officers?
No.
What exactly is the goal, for them? What should community safety officers be trained to do? What are things they're being asked to do that they shouldn't be doing? And then with that comes the issue of gun control.
Yeah.
I'm sure police officers are a little bit scared out there these days because so many people have weapons.
Yeah.
Whether it's legal or not, our society has a real love affair, if you will, about guns.
Mm-hmm.
And then when there's issues about gun control, that takes us into domestic violence. And, how many women are killed at the hands of their spouses or partners with an unregistered firearm? Those kinds of things. So it just goes, it's a big circle where our whole way of being sort of comes into question.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing for us to be asking questions about what is going on. Why do these things keep happening? Why do we let them keep happening? What do we need to do to fix the situation? So I think this is ultimately a good thing if we can make some positive, effective change.
Yeah. Yeah, very important, Doc. And I really appreciate talking to you about this because I've learned so much, and I'm sure my audience, those listening and those watching, will learn a lot. And I'm hoping to talk to you again on
Yes.
radio show, Canute Exploration Show, and the streaming Uber radio, internet radio soon. I will get in touch with you on that. Right?
I'd love that. Sure.
Right. Tell me, Marcia, you have written anything? Any writings?
I'm working on a couple of things. I'm writing a book that will help people help them become confident in being a faith-based advocate in the public square for social change. So that I expect that to be coming out next year, in time for people to read up and get ready for the midterms, which are going to be a critical time in the history of our country. And I'm writing a book about the clobber passages that have been used to beat LGBT people over the head and make them feel bad about themselves and unworthy as children of God. So, and I'll keep you posted on those.
Definitely. This episode is brought to you also by Deliver Drive Jamaica Limited, Deliver Drive LLC. It's a corporate delivery service. Doc, are you planning on going into politics?
No.
That no sounds really.
Oh no, I have no interest in doing that.
Okay. I have a political mind. I must declare now that I have plans for that. But I love to see you dabble into politics as well. You're a very interesting person. I think you contribute a lot to the political scene here in the United States. Think about it. All right.
You are so kind.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, I want you to tell us, it's across the screen, but persons listening on the podcast, your Instagram, first of all.
Okay. Instagram is Doc Ledford, at Doc Ledford. And that's the same one for Twitter, at Doc Ledford. Facebook, I have a couple of pages. One is Political Theology Matters, and Marcia Ledford, author, and The Lazarus Lives.
I see a website here, www.politicaltheologymatters.com. Are you seeing that, Doc? Did I lose you? Seems like we have lost Doc for a while as we finish up. I'm not sure what's going on. But that was Dr. Marcia Ledford. She's a theologian and also a lawyer. She has been talking about political theology matters, LLC. That's her company. It's should have been a non-profit, but it's no longer a non-profit. And maybe Doc will be back with us shortly. But she had talked a lot about social justice in America. She had talked a lot about the concept of Christian division, division of Christianity in America. She talked a lot about the whole thing of combining politics and religion, and the whole concept of social justice in our society and naturally around the world. She talked about the George Floyd incident and other incidents that would have required some pursuance of social justice. And she mentioned her childhood and the fact that she went to theological seminary, and she could not have done anything else but to blend theology with her legal studies. So she's a civil rights lawyer, Dr. Marcia Ledford, very brilliant mind, someone I think would do well in the political scene in the United States, and as she strives to ensure social justice for all in this society and naturally around the world. She talked about achieving greater social justice in the American society. That's her hope, and she'd like to see that done. She mentioned the fact that Jesus and Moses were political theologians because of the whole political lifestyle. You know, they've dabbled into politics really. She separate them: Moses, Old Testament; Jesus, New Testament, and she actually gave us an idea of the differences between political theology and civil religion, which is two great concepts, and she differentiate them in detail. And you know, it's something you'd like to hear more about. You know, eventually when she joined me again soon on the streaming of radio, internet radio, on the Canute Exploration Show, which should be heard every Tuesday and Wednesday at between 7 and 9 p.m. EET, streaming of radio out of Sunrise, Florida, starting soon. Marcia will be back with us to talk more about some of these concepts. And you know that, and she rejoined us. You know that you can get her and some of these. Hey, Marcia.
Hi.
Don't worry about it. You're good, right? You know that you can get her on some of these contact that we were talking about. Marcia, you were just talking about your website.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at politicaltheologymatters.com, politicaltheologymatters.com, and you can email me there at marcia@politicaltheologymatters.com. And you can download, I've got a nice little one sheet on the homepage that you can download that will help you find some ways to be a more active faith-based advocate in just 10 minutes a day.
Oh, cool. So there are some reading materials that we can get from your website.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, political theology. I mean, that's such an interesting concept, Marcia. I love it.
Well, thank you so much.
The Reverend, no, I'm seeing this. The Reverend Dr. Marcia Ledford, Esquire. Marcia, explain that.
It means attorney at law.
Oh, that's funny.
It's just shorthand.
Right. You see, you know, I was educated in the British system, really, and I know a lot about the British system. I figure here in the United States, Esquire is you know, you see that after the lawyers here, their name, right? Yeah.
Yep, and that's where it comes from because, of course, our body of common law comes from the United Kingdom.
Oh yeah. Okay. Fine.
Sure.
Fine. I love it, and it's very interesting how those lawyers trained, say in Jamaica, cannot practice here just like that. They have to understand the American law, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a difference. That's cool. That's unique. Hey, Marcia, it's nice talking to you. And
wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was great to be on your show. I'll keep you posted on what's happening, and hopefully we can do this again. I'd love it.
We will. Yeah.
All right.
We will. All right. Take care, Marcia.
All right. Bye-bye.
Nice. Yes, and as I said to you, that was Marcia Ledford, Dr. Marcia Ledford, Reverend, and very, very interesting lady. I am trying to push her into politics somehow. You know, I'm hoping to see her into the political system, though, right? Because she has a lot to offer, guys. And you know, my thing is that when you see great people who have a lot to offer society and have the people's interest at heart, you know, it is important that we try to encourage them to get involved. Yes, behind the scene, yes, but you know, be upfront would also be a good thing for a number of people like Marcia, who have an interest, the interest of the people at heart. You know, and as I said to you, it is my intention to get involved in politics as well. And hats off to Marcia. We'll be talking to her again soon. Anyway, still in a pandemic. I want everyone to remember that I'm not going to force you to take the vaccine. I take, you know, I actually took the Pfizer 2 doses, right? And yeah, I'm still standing. I'm still okay, right? And I suggest, I encourage you to take your vaccine. To remember, wash your hands, keep your distance, and wear your mask. Wear your mask, no, right? Jamaica is currently under a 3 days lockdown starting today. That's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They have had several 3 days lockdown. I think one was 4 days, and before this is the 12th of September, 2021, and it starts today and it will end and Tuesday. Guys, please be safe, keep safe, and do the right thing. And do the right thing mean if you have to take the vaccine, you know, go ahead, do it, because it's okay to do, right? It's okay to do. All right, so you will hear me again, Dr. Kenute White and Kenute Exploration. Next week we will talk. Walk good. Take care. Bye-bye.